All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. This is GitHub in my day job, which apparently is difficult for me to say this morning. The show where we bring on really cool people to chat about some of the different things that you're able to take advantage of in GitHub to make yourself more productive as a developer in your day job. Thus the clever title. And today we're going to be talking about both GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot X. And I have to say right away that GitHub Copilot is probably my favorite tool as a developer that I've seen released in my entire career. I'm not saying that just because I'm decked out head to toe in GitHub gear, but because of the impact that that's had on my ability to stay focused and create great things. And so today I'm really thrilled to be joined by a PM on the GitHub Copilot team, Allison Weins, and I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am not too bad. How about yourself?
I am doing all right. I've got my nice large mug of tea. My dog is also saying good morning. We'll see if she'll behave. We'll, throw some snacks her way whenever she gets a little feisty here. But she's very cute. Maybe if we're lucky, she'll come close enough for me to grab her and say hello.
Dogs are always welcome. When in doubt, more dogs. Just
yes.
As a general universal rule, more dogs.
Always.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'm like, ooh, should we get another puppy? And then she has like a temper tantrum during her presentation. I'm like, maybe not.
Well, give her somebody to play with. Give her somebody to play with.
That's true. Maybe they would just tire each other out.
Exactly. So let's kind of start here, just kind of real quick, is how did you find yourself where you are? How did you become the great Allison Weins?
Oh boy. Well, I became Allison Weins when I got married with my new last name. But I've been me and Allison Bucheltal/Weins through, oh gosh, I guess an eight-year journey if we're talking about professional life. So started on the Visual Studio team over at Microsoft. So dev tools have been my one and only love in this career. Worked on a smattering of things, always around developer productivity. I too love thinking about how I make all my friends like your job easier. That's what gets me up in the morning. And then moved to work on code spaces with GitHub projects for the last year, and then over to Copilot earlier this year. So really just, great opportunities that I was able to take advantage of, amazing teams along the way. And really, I've just been guided by what can I do to make developers' lives easier? And everything I've worked on has been in service to that. So I too am super excited about all the things that I think Copilot is going to do and has already done to help developers stay in the flow, get more done, and just generally have a more enjoyable time developing, right? No one wants to sit there combing through documentation, remembering the exact syntax when you're trying to learn a new language. Like, what you need to do. And sometimes development almost gets in your way instead of like helping you along.
That's a perfect phrase. Development gets in your way. I really like that. I'm going to steal that. I do want to highlight kind of real quick here where the comment was there a second ago, but now I can't find it anymore. But somebody had asked whether or not we are live, or whether or not we. I think this sort of answers the question as to whether or not we're live. If we were pre-recorded, we absolutely would have edited that part out there. But we are, in fact, live, so please feel free to ask any questions that you might want. I don't think this audience today is necessarily going to need a lot of encouragement because I'm already stacked over here on questions. So
there are a lot of comments. Hello, everyone. Very excited to see you all.
This is going to be fantastic. So let's start from the top. Let's start from here. What is GitHub Copilot?
GitHub Copilot is effectively our offering for how artificial, AI can infuse all parts of your workflow with GitHub. Currently, we have our primary offering, which is supercharged auto completions. So you'll have seen that for the last, 2 years now, if we were talking about the beginning of our technical preview. But effectively, based on your context in your editor, Copilot can give you amazing suggestions that will help you get through your development faster. But Copilot more generally, like as a brand, as a service, is really about infusing AI across every part of the development workflow. And that auto completion was just the first step. I think as we've seen with some of our recent announcements, Copilot is going to be everywhere that you want it to be, and maybe even some places you don't expect it to be. One of our key sort of phrases here that we talk about on the team is ubiquity, which to us really means Copilot is everywhere you want it to be and you need it to be. And that's really our vision that we're working toward.
Okay, I love that. So let's kind of keep defining terms. You said something I do want to go back to and ask a question about, but I at least want to kind of make sure that we've got all the terms defined there. Although you sort of, I think, have already hinted at it. Is what is GitHub Copilot X?
Yeah, so GitHub Copilot X is a bit of like a fun name, and it's really our vision for what Copilot will be. So it's not necessarily a like package that you buy. It's not a brand new thing. It's really a signal and a naming of our intent and our vision for Copilot. So that event back in March was really about giving you a sneak peek into all the various things that we're thinking about and working to bring to market as part of the Copilot offering.
Okay, so Copilot X then isn't a product, but rather kind of more of a vision, I think is.
Of a vision. Yeah, exactly. It's a vision. Copilot is really the brand and the product, right? And Copilot X is our vision. It's how we think Copilot should evolve and the things we'd love to provide for you in the future. So whether that's help in your documentation, whether that's helping you with your PRs, whether that's helping you in your CLI. These are all just various touch points and additional features that we're hoping to bring to you soon.
Okay. Now, we'll absolutely come back and hit this again, but there's already been a whole bunch of questions about Copilot X in particular. So I at least kind of want to ask a couple of real basics there. Number one is, where can somebody go if they want to go find out more about Copilot X or potentially get signed up? Let's sort of ask that first.
Absolutely. So we do have a page that is all about Copilot X and that announcement, as well as a blog post that I believe is linked from that main primary page. We've got it there on the screen. And from there, you'll actually find the 4 different wait lists that we have, one for each of the features that we announced during the Copilot X event. And so that would be chat, docs, PRs, and CLI. And so depending on what each of you listening in is interested in, you'll want to sign up for each one of those. And if you're interested in all of them, you got 4 clicks to get through. But each one of those have their own separate wait list for each of those features.
Okay. And then to answer the other very big question is, we do not have any form of a release date that we have to share anything like that today.
We don't, unfortunately. I would love to give a date as much as the next person, but it really just depends on the product life cycle. My worst fear would be to let everyone in and it's a terrible experience, right? That's not what we want. We hold ourselves to a high bar, and we really want to make sure that we're being, careful with capacity, and also ensuring that when you get in, you're going to have a great time. So we're working, trust me, as hard as we can and as fast as we can to get you access to these things. But we do just want to be, deliberate with how we scale that out.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate that. And just speaking again, like as a developer, like there's enough frustration already in development, and there's enough frustration sometimes with tools and frameworks that if I'm going to be using something that's going to be as pervasive as something like Copilot chat or whatever it is that it happens to be, I want to make sure that it works. I want to make sure that it behaves in the way that I'm expecting to.
Yeah.
That if I'm not getting that great experience, it's not going to be a very good
And then,
experience.
I mean, I also just think, selfishly as the product team in technical previews like this, so much of what we want is to be able to get feedback and to analyze that feedback and make sure we're acting on it appropriately. And so there's a scale problem for us as well, where if I have a million comments to sort through, right, that's going to be difficult for me to understand what I need to change. And so having, a smaller group to start, being able to engage really quickly, make edits, and then grow is, I think, just really vital for the sort of iterative development that we like to do.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. Okay. So now that we've sort of at least kind of high level set the stage, I'd love to start to dig in a little bit to Copilot of today, and I guess then in turn kind of Copilot of tomorrow. So Copilot of today, you mentioned that it's that inline, and you use the phrase autocomplete there. And that immediately like brings in that question of, okay, so is this like IntelliSense?
I mean, it's certainly similar, right? IntelliSense was all about providing you the next, variable name, or helping you complete a method or class. But IntelliSense was really one word or, thing at a time. And I think another thing to remember is that IntelliSense has the context of the compiler that's backing it, right? IntelliSense knows what things can follow wherever you are based on things like static analysis, right? That's part of the fun of IDEs, particularly ones that are, that are focused on a particular language, right? When you use, I'll use Visual Studio because that's my background. When you use Visual Studio and you're building in C#, we know what is syntactically correct, and IntelliSense can scope its suggestions to that. Copilot is slightly different, very similar, but different in that, these models are probabilistic. They're really text-based. So they're just trying to predict the next set of text that's coming. Now, that allows us to generate much more robust suggestions, larger suggestions. I think I even have seen one up to like 50 lines the other day, which was pretty amazing to see. But the models don't have the context of what will compile or not. They don't have the notion of a compiler that's checking these things. And so IntelliSense, while perhaps being slightly more accurate with the word by word generation, because we do have that context, is limited to being word by word. And Copilot can give you much more robust ones, but our suggestions are only as good as our models. And let's be real. There's some code out there that probably doesn't compile. And so even though Copilot is doing the best it can, there's always that tiny chance that however the probabilities played out that day, what the wind was, we might get a suggestion that our compiler doesn't actually like.
Okay.
But that's a lot easier to fix, right? If 99% of the suggestion is right and you're missing a semicolon, your output, your problem window will help you catch that.
Yeah, absolutely. As I will sometimes make the analogy that like if I'm like writing a blog post or I'm like creating content, a lot of times it's easier to edit than it is to actually create that kind of old blank page problem that if I'm just staring at something, I don't know where to get started. And so like having something like Copilot, even if it's only getting me like a little bit of the way there, is just sort of showing me that first thing, that in and of itself is hugely beneficial. Then I can go in and start editing and tweaking and so forth.
Absolutely. I mean, I am completely the same way. A blank page is like probably one of the scariest things for me, but give me something to edit, give me something to curate and massage, and I will be infinitely happier and more productive.
Right, right, absolutely. So then also right along those lines, when we're talking about the code that's being generated, again, like it's I'm trying to figure out how I want to phrase this, but it's it's not always going to be perfect code per se. So it's
Mhm.
still incumbent then on the developer to like manage that just as if
Yeah,
they wrote their own code or that they pulled that code from somewhere else. Because I think if basically if a developer is going to be honest, they're not creating all of their code out of whole cloth. They're just not sitting there typing it all out. They're firing up fill in search engine here, going for, finding whatever it is they want, copy paste, and then they're having to go in and edit it. And again, like
right.
you don't necessarily know if that code is going to run.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, we all take inspiration from things around us, whether that's, the way a class was
Inspiration, that's a great
written
word.
by, what I mean, certainly for me, every time I build a demo project, I go back and look at my last demo project and say, okay, how can I take this? What's the scaffolding I need? What's the like general outline that I'm looking for here? And that's a lot of time, right? Finding the right example tutorial, finding the right skeleton project, even looking through your own old code. Whew, that's so much time. My hard drive certainly needs a cleanup, so I can find my demos a little bit more easily.
I feel you. Yeah.
But yeah, you're
Get rid of all
constantly
your node
looking
modules.
historically, and editing. Like
Yeah.
we're just constantly iterating, right? Development is
Yep.
an iterative process, and I think that applies to pretty much everything we do.
Yep. Yeah, I agree completely. I also really kind of like this analogy that liken it to like a pair programmer with a junior developer. They write most of the code. I supervise, make sure it's correct, follows the style, and does what I'm really looking for it to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the name is co-pilot, right? It's not the pilot. It's not going to read your mind and write everything exactly as you expected it to. It's here so that you are in the pilot seat and it's just helping you along. The other analogy I really like is co-pilot is a bit more of a bicycle. I can run a mile myself. I know you can run 26 of them, Christopher.
And point two.
And point two. And we can get to the end. Like we can do that. It might be a long run, but we can do it. Copilot is like the bike that I decide to take instead. It gets me there a lot faster, but I still have to steer it. I still have to, put in my own energy and pedal it. The bike's going to sit there not doing anything unless I am actively engaging with it and using it as a tool. Imagine that.
I like it. I like it. So I I want to kind of keep going a little bit with this because I've been asked this question, or I've seen this question kind of fly through a few times now about being able to help Copilot out in
Mhm.
making better suggestions. So I'm going to sort of ask two questions here in one. Part A is, how can you help Copilot give you the best quality of suggestion? And then number two is it possible to point Copilot at a company's existing code base so that way it can learn from that and start making suggestions based around that?
Yeah. So, to the first question, a couple of things that you can do to help Copilot. So, having files that are related to the work that you're doing open in your editor is useful because when we compile the prompt that we send to the service to give you a suggestion, we not only look before and after your cursor, right, but we look at those sort of context from neighboring files. And so, for example, if you've got a like schema open in a file and you're trying to, write something to call that or edit it, Copilot can help you because it knows, okay, this is like the shape of the data. This is how they might want to call it or update it. So that certainly helps. The other thing you can do is just give your intent, right? And since Copilot can't read your mind, what that looks like most often is with a comment. So saying things like, create a class that does X using Y API, tells Copilot the API you're trying to use, it tells it your intent. And now we can use that as part of our prompt to say, all right, we definitely know what this developer is trying to do. And now I can limit my suggestions so that I'm giving the most relevant ones for their goal.
There we go.
And then
Sorry.
and I was going to say your second one on sort of company code would be not yet. The team is certainly looking into that. I think one of the other main pillars that we talk about with Copilot, and particularly with our vision, is personalization. And so right now, Copilot is personalized to you as a user because it's about like where your cursor is, right? What Copilot is going to do for you is dependent on the context you're in. And for companies, we know there are many folks who have very particular languages that they care about that maybe aren't, as pervasive in the open source. They also have particular guidelines or ways that they craft their software that they would like Copilot to understand. And we're certainly looking into ways that will allow companies to allow us to sort of customize a model or personalize a model for them. But that is still early days where we're trying to figure out how to make that work best. Because I think, at the end of the day, the model that we use right now, massive, tons of code, huge training set. And I think there's this core sort of stress when you now have a company's, code that they want to be used for training. And that's much smaller. So how do you weight that? How do you make sure you're providing enough weight to that set of code without potentially reducing the accuracy of the suggestions when developers are perhaps building something new that hasn't been in the code base before? So tons of fun balancing acts that we have to do there.
That's a great point. It's something I hadn't even thought about. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I now, so just kind of real quick, I do want to answer real quick clarifying. Somebody had asked, what do you mean by files open in the project or in a tab? Open in a tab, I believe is what
open in a tab in your
referring
editor.
to. Yep. And then the second is, and I can't believe we're already like 23 minutes in. We're having a lot of fun chatting. But somebody I think asked probably the biggest question. How about a demo?
Do you want to do the demo? Do you want to show the new stuff? Or do we want to do classic
We haven't talked about the new
stuff?
Well, I mean, we could do it either way. Do you want me to demo? Do you want a demo?
You know what? Let's see if my demo will work here. This is my favorite one where things just kind of work, and let's see things kind of work. Remember, team, this is probabilistic.
Live demos. Yeah.
Live demos. Oh boy, now I have to figure out which screen. Let's be real. We've got a lot of tabs over on here. Cool. Do we see VS Code? I know where.
Oh, yep. There we go. Add to stream. Yep. Cool, if you want to hit Command plus a couple of times just to zoom in, and we've got it. Oh, I love Java. Perfect. Excellent.
When's the last time I heard? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. All right. So here, very simple demo from my end for anyone who hasn't seen Copilot before. Effectively, I've got this customer management file here, and I've got a comment that says, I want to create a class to manage the customers using the Stripe API. And if I just hit enter, we've got great. We're going to start importing libraries. And another one. and another one. And I'm literally just hitting tab and enter and tab and enter and tab and enter. And how many characters do you think we've saved already here? Oh,
So
it's like
it's
great.
so all of
It's just
that,
back and
all of
forth.
that like gray italicized text, that's just like Copilot, and all you're doing is just hitting
That's just
tab to kind of
Copilot. I'm
accept as it
literally,
imports
I
everything
have,
in.
my fingers have not left the tab and enter keys as of yet. So we're going to
Perfect.
create the customer class. We're going to be like, great, what's happening here? Copilot's thinking. And it says, ah, all right, done.
Okay, so it's now got, if you want to scroll up just kind of real quick. So it's now got the whole thing.
I mean, this looks pretty good. I will say I'm not a Java developer. And I certainly haven't used haven't built like a customer class to manage things in a very long time. But this feels pretty good to me from what I remember of my early development days. Uh, yeah, that's
If
just all
if
there.
nothing else, that's a fantastic start. And
It's
then
an
I could go
amazing
in and
start.
start
Yes,
modifying. Yeah.
exactly. I could go in, and I mean, like, at least for me, whenever I'm trying to like build demos and like get started, like this is really the stuff I sort of need, right? I need the scaffolding. Now I can, probably find a tutorial and be like, okay, cool. I've got this class done. Now let me actually start to like use it and start testing it. And as you said, it's given me so many things to work with so that I can really just focus on, okay, I think I've got the scaffolding right. Now let me move to the next step. And maybe I'm going to come back here and tinker with some items, fix some things, but I've got such a great starting point that would have required me as, Allison, so many steps through various web browsers and tabs and copies and pastes. And here I've got an amazing place to start and move forward.
That's fantastic. And what I really like about that is because like it's something like that is I think like a perfect example of you'll have an experienced developer, but like creating that initial like management object or creating like some underlying scaffolding or things like that. It's something that we've all done, but it's not something that we do on a regular basis. And so even
Yep.
like the most seasoned developer will go, oh my gosh, I know how to do this, but it's been 3 months. I just can't remember. I'm going to have to go look up that in the documentation. And you were able to just go, hey, this is what I need. And then it goes ahead and it creates that for you. And now, again, like I, as the developer, let me go solve the bigger problems. I now don't
Exactly.
have to worry about this.
Exactly. So I love this. It's just such a cool, it's just so cool. And I saw a few folks in the chat, asking, which languages are supported. Technically, Copilot supports all languages. There are some that we are better at than others, and those are primarily ones like Python, Java, JavaScript, ones that you find in use a lot more often. COBOL, like, we might have some interesting suggestions there, but you probably want to do a bit more, verification of our suggestions.
Mhm.
And so really, I think, my suggestion for everyone in the chat who's tuning in is certainly give it a try on whatever languages and just send us feedback on ones that you think we could be better at, right? We're constantly improving. We're constantly trying to tweak, our suggestions and make sure that Copilot is really for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There was something I was gonna ask, and now I sort of forgot. I love this little comment. Yeah, now nobody's gonna complain about boilerplate. That's exactly it.
That's
This
exactly
is
it.
yeah,
And I will
yeah.
say, like, Copilot is excellent at boilerplate code because it's very predictable, right? The more like patterns
Puppy.
there is a puppy. Let me see if she'll come here, puppy.
So related to that, because the way that you kicked that off was you added in a comment and then it kind of went from there. And the way that I understand Copilot is it's not just looking at comments, but also the code that you're writing. This phrase I actually just came across like a couple of days ago. I've always referred to this as comment-driven development. And so like prompt engineering is sort of the other phrases. So like, just kind of how do you feel about that? And do you feel like as a developer that kind of changes the way that you've done code?
Yeah, I mean, prompt engineering is so interesting because it's not only prompt engineering for my team, right? For the Copilot team, we think about prompt engineering when we think about what what is related, what do we actually put into the prompt that we create and send to the model to ensure that we're getting good suggestions back for the user. So there's prompt engineering that the team has to do just by default, because that's the way we ensure the product is functioning well. And we're constantly experimenting with how can we update the prompt? How do we think about what other, what related means in open files? How can we craft that prompt ourselves on the service to ensure we're getting better recommendations? And then you also have prompt engineering from the user side, which is how do they as users provide the right sort of comments. I see, a comment in our chat here, which is, how do you think about naming your classes and methods such that they provide more context? How do you think about which files you should have open? And I think prompt engineering it's something we all have to care about. And as Copilot continues to evolve, I think it will be very interesting the sort of context we either ask users for deliberately or that we learn to sort of snag ourselves.
Yeah, and at the risk of like a slight, this isn't a rant, this is just going to be a strong opinion, is one of the questions that I very commonly get asked is, should you leave those comments behind in your code? And I have strong opinions when it comes to comments and code, because as somebody else mentioned in the chat over here, and you mentioned as well about like the importance of still making sure that you have good class names and method names and so forth. Like, code should still be readable. And if your comments are trying to overcome unreadable code, your real problem is the unreadable code. So right. From my perspective, comments should be providing additional context that just couldn't be gleaned. So maybe like why something was done, or the rationale behind a business rule or something like that. Like, like a message in a bottle that you're not going to be able to figure out on your own. So towards that end, my personal opinion is those comments, those prompts that are being used to have Copilot generate the class, I feel that those are artifacts. And I personally like leaving those behind. So that way, when somebody comes in, they can look at that and they can kind of know, oh, okay, this is how that class was created. So it is, I think, providing a little bit of additional context. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but that's my opinion.
Also, think about it. The next person that comes in, ideally, they've also got Copilot. And so you're just leaving behind artifacts that help ensure they get the best recommendations as well. So I think it's all goodness there.
Yeah. And actually, just to kind of keep going right along with that, we're talking about trying to improve the quality of the code suggestions that we're going to get. It's always going to be better if Copilot has more context. And so if you've got more comments already there, that's only going to be goodness. That's really only going to help. So, yeah. Cool. So what you just demoed there, all of that is in Copilot today. So somebody can go get GitHub Copilot for Business, and they can start doing that today.
Absolutely.
So let's start to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to say tomorrow, but somebody's going to pin me down on that. It's like, you said a specific date. What's going to be possible in the future? And let's sort of start with, I think the one that I'm personally most interested in, especially because we always get asked the question of what about ChatGPT? And that's, of course, GitHub Copilot Chat. So what is GitHub Copilot Chat? Let's sort of start there. Oh, I see you actually already bringing it up.
In the background here for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, GitHub Copilot Chat is effectively our integrated offering that will allow Copilot to be more conversational. I think that is, I'm just running through each of our pillars here. So conversational is the other sort of pillar that we talk about with Copilot. Right now, you can sort of have a conversation with Copilot with autocomplete where you're providing comments, it's giving you a suggestion, and maybe you go back and forth with it a little bit. But one of the things we heard from our users is they really want to be able to ask more free-form questions during development. Things like, what's the difference between this library and this one? What should I use to accomplish some task? Can you tell me more about a particular framework? What does this piece of code do? All of these questions are things that you couldn't ask Copilot via autocomplete. You would still have to go out to the web and ask these questions to a search engine and search around. But with Copilot Chat, we're actually integrating into our editors to allow you to ask those questions just as you normally would. So if we switch to my screen here, we'll see I've got my sort of example Python file up. And
RegEx.
Yeah, I don't know about you. Me and RegEx, I look at them and I'm like, those are some pretty letters and numbers. I can build it, but it'll take me a bit.
I can read it pretty well. When it comes time to write it is usually where I have a little bit more of a struggle.
Got it. Well, for this one also, I mean, we've got some not well-named regexes here. So let me just ask Copilot, can you explain this code? Copilot thinks, it's 3 regular expressions, email, phone number, password. Email, phone number, maybe password, and oh my gosh, I think this one might be different. Whoever did these, weird naming here.
Yeah.
But I think I see it now. Email, phone number, password for sure. Hello, my little nugget. And then it defines a function called check valid and returns true or false. Okay, cool. So now I have an understanding of what's going on here. Now, Copilot tries to help and it says, do you want an example of the check valid function? I think I'm good, Copilot. I'm going to ask if you can add comments and make this more readable. All right. So now, look at that. Now it says, great. I've got all this. I'm going to copy this. I could also just select all here and insert it, and it's replaced it. And now look at that. It's also more readable, which we love. We've got email, phone, password. Love that. It talks about what each of these regular expressions does. And this looks pretty nice, I will say. And it's even saying, hey, can we suggest some improvements to the password for stronger validation? I haven't done this part of the demo before, but we'll click on it in a second. I also want to point out, Copilot tells me what it's done in case it wasn't obvious from here. All right. Okay, cool. So here's an improved password one. We've got 8 characters, 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, 1 digit, and 1 special. It's original, but it adds a new positive look ahead assertion, which is amazing. I don't know that I would have thought to do that. So we'll highlight, insert it, and now we've got a stronger password. Mm-hmm. And it just continues to help. Can we validate a URL? Maybe someone wants to put in their website here as well for this example. And it's pretty cool in my opinion.
That is fantastic. Might be imagining things as a dog. Yes, the dog is contributing to the demo.
We
Yes,
might be able to grab
absolutely.
her in a second and show her on the screen, but she is a finicky one. So, yeah, my puppy does not want off to work. She wants no passwords whatsoever. Everyone,
Puppy-driven development. I
puppy-driven development.
I do want to go back. So on my list of peeves when it comes to development and code, number one is bad variable names, single
Oh,
letter variable names, just flames at the side of my head. That I just cannot stand it. And so the fact that you were able to just go, hey, give me something better here, and it now kind of renamed everything is absolutely fantastic, because like the way that it was before with the E underscore P underscore S underscore, and I guess the S was supposed to be like for secure or something, like,
secure.
yeah, exactly, like that's not something that's going to be readable by somebody in the future. And of course, usually the person that's really going to get punished is me, because I'll write the code and then 6 months later have
Right.
to go back to it and forget what it was that I was
And you're like,
doing.
what is this?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's fantastic. There was a question: is GitHub Copilot Chat available now? And sadly, not yet.
Not yet. It is
It's yeah.
in technical preview, so be sure to sign up for the wait list. And as I said, earlier, this hour, we are really working as fast as we can to be able to let folks in. But no timeline to share at this point. We just ask for your patience and know that we are working really, really hard to try and get this to y'all as soon as we can.
We are. We are. I want to. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm gonna need 5 seconds here, apparently, to just move a couple of things around, so that way I can hopefully properly. Oh, okay. All right. Um,
In case
I
anyone's wondering, we are live.
We are live. Yes. Well, what's funny is I had opened this up earlier and it then decided that it wasn't going to behave. And then I went to go share it. And then it once again decided that it wasn't going to behave. Let me try this one last time here, because I want to show a real quick demo here. If I can, window, you're not showing up there, the entire screen. Okay. You know what? We're just going to do it this way. I want that. Okay. And then we sort of get that effect. Okay. And
Oh,
hopefully, with a little bit of luck, is everybody seeing my screen?
yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. So let me do this. I'm going to just kind of real quick create a model. Let's say create a speaker, name, email, and LinkedIn URL, like that. Cool. And then now Copilot is going to do its little bit of magic and then do its little bit of magic. Fantastic.
Magic.
Yes, just like that. So one of the biggest questions that I get asked when I'm talking with different enterprise customers is about translation. So they've got maybe some old COBOL code, and they're just trying to slowly eventually get that migrated over to something else, or they're again, like moving from one system to another, or like maybe Python 2 up to Python 3. How do we do that? How can we kind of bring in a couple of tools to help us with that process? And this is where Copilot Chat, there we go, can help out. Let me clear that. So, one big question that I always get asked is, what's the difference between ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot? And one of the biggest is the amount of context that Copilot has, because Copilot can see right here what it is that I'm doing. So I don't have to go back and explain, this is where I am, now tell me the next step. Copilot knows this. So I can highlight this block of code and I can say, hey, rewrite this in C#. Boop. Sound effects. And then now it's going to go ahead and give me that equivalent in C#. So it's giving me the name, email, and LinkedIn. And then it's also overriding that toString down at the very bottom with name. So let me also add in, okay, that's cool, but add validation to the speaker. And so now, there we go. It has rewritten that to include validation. So hold on, it did that in Python. Sorry, rewrite.
And see,
Doing
this
what
is the
I asked
thing,
it
right?
to. Yeah,
You've
speaker.
got to be specific. And
Yeah,
it's all about helping Copilot better understand what you need in the same way that we as people have to maybe ask questions to understand what our coworkers actually need or our families. Miscommunications happen, and it's normal, right? It's a conversation, as you very well would expect it.
exactly. Yep. Yeah. So right here, when I asked it to kind of do its thing, it didn't pick up that I was still trying to talk about C#. So just rewrote it in Python. That's not a problem. I went back, just got a little bit more explicit. And then now you're going to notice that it's importing in that data annotations, and now it's doing it with all of those attributes. So now I can start to see, oh, okay, this is how I could do that in C#. I could use that as my starter and then continue my migration from there, which I really appreciate.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, what we all know that many folks in the industry are working in various languages, and so having tooling that will support you as you switch between two or three or more is critical. And also critical as new frameworks and languages come into play, right? We certainly have not seen the last new language, I expect. And so we'll all be learning something new at some point.
in fact, while we've been broadcasting, 4 new JavaScript frameworks have been launched.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, too funny. Okay, so we've got about like 13 minutes left here. So kind of just a real quick overview then. What are the other components that are making up the umbrella that is GitHub Copilot X?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just talked about chat, which is, well, I'm very excited for chat. The other three are PRs, docs, and CLI. So PRs will be how can we help you have better PRs, right? One of the big things that we see, and I'm sure many of our folks out there see, is you are, under time crunches to get work done. You've got the PR out, and you could spend a ton of time crafting a really good body for what's changing here, what's happening, what your intent was. But really, you just need someone to review it and start to, review so you can get it in. You're just trying to get that PR merged. And what we're hoping to do is be able to do things like, hey, given this set of code changes, can you help me build like a quick summary of what changed so that whoever comes to review my pull request can very easily understand and know where to look at it. And then what you could, oh, excuse me. And with that as well, wouldn't it be great if Copilot could say, here's what the code does, or like our best approximation of what the code does, which might be different from what you wanted it to do. So based on the code paths and the changes, could we help you understand what your code is actually doing versus what you intend it to do, as almost like a pre-check state. Docs is really about understanding documentation and allowing you to better reference, your documentation, and also to be able to ask it questions in a very similar way that we see with chat, right? We have the ability to ask a question. Copilot chat gives us an explanation, but wouldn't that be great if your company had the internal playbooks and we could understand that as Copilot? And when we give you a suggestion, we could say, oh, here's like the reference that talks about why you should do it this way. Or here's, information about the setup that you need to go do. And as well, like you could think about that extending to like open source docs as well. Not only here is how you should use this class, but here's a direct link to the most recent documentation that we have for this. And then finally, CLI. Effectively, I certainly am not in the CLI a lot. And if you are around, working in there a lot, how can Copilot help you understand things like Git commands, maybe? If you are finally using a terminal instead of the UI, how can we help you troubleshoot, searching through your computer using the CLI? How can we help you better engage with CLI tooling, whether that's the GitHub CLI or the Azure CLI? How can we just help you in the same way that we've helped with auto completions in your code editor? How can we help with, shell commands?
Yeah. I love all of that. I think the CLI is probably like the most obvious. The docs one, I spent years and years in training, and so like the docs one is so near and dear to my heart, because in order to like read docs, there's a certain level of understanding that you need to have. Like there's a set of
Right.
vernacular, and if you don't understand that, the docs are just written in complete gibberish. And
Right.
so like having something that's going to put a better front end on that is fantastic.
And I think you speak to like a really great point there, which is, working with so many incredible doc writers over the years, trying to understand what experience level you should be writing for, and trying to ensure that you really are providing information for all of your users is incredibly hard, because there are particular words or vernacular that they may not be comfortable with yet. And there's no good way to just like hover over a word and get more information about that, right?
Right.
Or ask about a particular background context that would help you better understand the documentation at large.
Yep.
So I think being able to ask questions like that of your documentation I think will help a lot.
I agree completely. Yeah, and having better PR statements. I think we all need that.
It's goodness all around.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. A couple of people did mention about the GitHub swag like that you have, and it is one of those things. Let me see if I can like point correctly. Yeah, all of us have just gobs and gobs.
Got this one too.
There you
She's
go.
really up here though.
Yep. Yeah. And I've also got the there we go, the Hubot.
Oh yeah,
yeah, back there. So, yep, yeah, cool. All right, let's see. Other last little questions. Again, we don't have a release date. That's been asked a handful of times. Training on your own code. It's something that we're investigating, but don't have anything to mention. JavaScript is the final language. I am not going down language wars. I'm not going anywhere near that. Is there anything else that you're going, oh, I really wanted to mention this, but forgot? Or what if people want to like start digging, where should they go?
I mean, I think if you want to start digging, our like classic Copilot documentation is a great place to start. Our feature page, but you should definitely just start trying to use Copilot. I mean, that's the best way really to learn and move forward here. And definitely sign up for our wait lists. Those will be a great way to dig in more as we expand access.
Let's close with this. You mentioned about like just getting in and playing, because personally I think that's the best way to like just learn what it is that Copilot can and can't do, is just to start playing. But what tips do you have for somebody who's like going to try GitHub Copilot for the first time? Like how can they get the best out of it?
Yeah, so I think my big tips are, definitely I would use it on languages that are, popular in the open source. So as I said, your Python, your JavaScript, Go, great things, TypeScript, all great things to use. And as well, definitely provide context. So use those comments, they'll help you too. And you can also, as I said, just like have similar, files open in your editor. I think, one way to just like kind of really dig in if you're really just getting started is see how it is following like a tutorial, right? Like go to any given framework, try to build a website, take the like very early scaffolding and start to try and build functionality for that, and see how much faster you are doing it with Copilot than on your own. I would imagine that you'll be flipping back and forth between the tutorial step by step, if you do it with Copilot than without.
Yeah. Yep. I agree completely. Yeah. I always think that's the best way. Get in, play with it, do something. Do something that
And
that
I
that means something to you. Yeah.
Yes, do something that means something to you, because again, having intent is so important, and understanding where you want to run to is vital, I think, for, Copilot right now. And so if you're expecting Copilot to tell you, oh, like you should build a page that does X, you're probably not going to get very far. But if you're like me and you know that you want to build a website to track all of the books currently on your bookshelf that you still have left to read, that'll give you sort of the North Star that you're working towards, and you can help Copilot understand that you're working towards, so that it can help you along.
I'm going to need a lot more storage if I'm going to set up a database that manages all the books that I've yet to read that want to. I just, yeah,
We
yeah,
can work on it together.
perfect. Beautiful. Allison, thank you so very much for coming on, chatting about Copilot. Again, if you haven't already played, go check it out. I'll throw the link up one more time here if I can find the right screen. There we go. Beautiful. So yeah, thank you so very much for coming on today. This has been fantastic.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And then real quick for next week, let me try and clean up my screen here. There we go. That we're going to have Chris Reddington in as a guest host to talk about GitHub Actions, bringing on a couple of really, really smart people to talk about automation. So definitely tune in for that next week. And thank you very much to everybody for joining. Can I figure out how to get rid of that screen in StreamYard? There we go. I knew I could do it. Beautiful. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. This is GitHub and my day job. Thank you again to Allison. Bye.